So the roundtable conference, the roundtable today is going to be about how has the content consumption changed with the advent of social media. So mainly how things have been. So in 2004, like when Facebook entered in the market, we were sharing status updates, and then there were scraps on Orkut and things like that. By 2009, the photos and everything introduced. People were uploading albums because the bandwidth increased, and slowly and gradually, as the bandwidth was increasing day by day, then we were seeing that more and more people are uploading different content. So in some around 2014 2015 time, we had the first live video which was going out, but the bandwidth was not good, so good. But after 2016, we have also seen a lot of trend that live videos are going out a lot. Now if you open your Instagram, the first step on the story step that you see, there are a lot of live videos which are going. So the way content has changed, the way content has evolved, we will be discussing those things in the coming session, that in the coming 1.5 hours that we have today. I will like to take this opportunity to thank all our partners which have been very instrumental in bringing this summit to you. So we have eChai Network, we have NID Incubator, uh, then we have Head Start Network, we have Pratham, which does good work in the Ahmedabad circuit for students. We have Ahmedabad Live with us. We have TEDSol Pro. So I will like to thank all of them. And let me start with Umang. Umang, please, if you can introduce yourself to people.
Good morning, guys. Firstly, thank you for joining us at 11 a.m. On Friday. So, my name is Umang. I head the team at the Social Mango, which is a digital marketing agency, and also at a firm called as Tender Curve, which is hardly like a year old. It's an e-commerce platform. So, I would like to talk about the Social Mango. I am totally an accidental entrepreneur, to be honest. So, what had happened was that while I was working in Australia with an agency, and I came back to India. So when I came back to India, I got a call. I got a lot of work while I was here. So over 1 year, what happened was that since I had few of the Australian clients, it became very difficult for me to handle the inflow of work. So that is how the Social Mango was born. To be honest, we are still trying to enhance ourselves on a daily basis, upgrading ourselves. If you talk or if I think about all the notable clients that we've handled, it would be few divisions of Z. We've taken under trainings at Cycles, we've been taking under trainings at NM, and we have a lot broad scope. So if you have any queries, I'm here to answer. And thank you so much.
Great, Umang. We can move to Harsh.
Hi guys. Yeah, when Umang said she's an accidental entrepreneur, I could definitely understand where she's coming from. Because I've probably done, I think, 10 different things till date. If you guys have actually stalked me on LinkedIn, you would have seen I've done, I studied science actually in college. I then went to law because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do and engineering didn't seem fun. I have done a bit of journalism. I've done a bit of advertising. I've learned tattooing for 6 months. I went back to law and then the soul store happened. So I think, yeah, I think one thing which we keep joking about in office is how the whole concept or the whole idea behind the soul store was to basically do what you love and follow what you love. And I think that's pretty much defined my journey till now, where I've tried multiple things, and if I didn't like it, I was always open to kind of switch to the next thing. And luckily, it's been about 5.5 years with the Soul Stone. It's been a great journey. Just to give you guys some sort of background about the Soul Store, we're an e-commerce startup, mainly into merchandising. We're the biggest brand for official merchandise in the country. So we've tied up with DC, Marvel, Harry Potter, WWE, Friends, Big Bang Theory, all your favorite TV shows and cartoons, and we sell their official merchandise in India. So it's been a pretty fun journey for sure over the last 5 or 6 years, and yeah, hope we can get a lot more licenses and a lot more cool products to serve you guys in future as well.
Great. Thanks a lot, Harsh. So we have a lot of people who are going to follow our passion, and then Vinit falls in the same line. So over to you, Vinit.
Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So a bit about me. I started my first blog in 2001 it was on GeoCities, and then I started one more in 2003, which was on Angel Fire. So I come from that purest blogging era. When blogging was about putting your thoughts out, and four bloggers met online through blogs, and we essentially met by commenting on each other's blogs, and four of us co-founded Indie Blogger in 2007, which went on to become one of the largest blogging directories and communities in the world for a specific nationality. So we were only for Indians. So I come from that background of having promoted a lot of brands and blogs on Orkut. Woke up to Facebook, woke up to Twitter, saw the evolution of how content kind of has evolved from just long format to multiple formats, more interesting formats that we see today in terms of stories and so on. So I've seen this entire evolution of data from 2001 actually personally, and it's very interesting to see what kind of questions come forth today. Last 12 odd years, I've been an entrepreneur from indie blogger to now a travel tech startup. So it's been a constant journey of learning for me, and I think I've learned most by understanding consumers and customers. So because everything that we do has to eventually kind of serve them in one way or the other. So that's been the only thing I kind of have used to learn whatever I've done and whatever I've implemented. And today I actually hope to learn more from the kind of questions that kind of come forth for us, all of us. I look forward to that.
Great. Thanks
and
a lot.
Thanks, Sahil, for having me for this.
Thanks a lot, Vinit, for joining us today. Before we move on, I will like everybody to take a quick poll so that we understand that what are the backgrounds of the people here. So I'll launch the poll. So please take part of the poll, everybody. Okay, yeah, we have started getting responses. It will be open for just 45 seconds. So please, everyone, it's the fastest finger first. Okay, we got around 65% already. Okay, it's 45 seconds ending the poll. So sharing the results. So today in the morning, I think masters are the people who wake up early. I think people from masters are the ones who wake up early. Most of the sessions that we are having bachelors as the more in the evening part. But okay, so we have around 25% audience from bachelors. We have 35% from masters. 18% are business owners. 8% are marketing enthusiasts. And then people are working in marketing domain are also 14%. So age group 15 to 21 is very less. Most of them are sleeping, I think so. So it's 22. 22 to 25 are the ones who have to do household things most of the time. So they are up and they are around 43%. We have 29% of the people who fall under 26 to 35. And around 3 people are there who are about 35. Okay, great. So we have a mixed audience and most of them are under 35. So let us begin our thing. So my first question is, Vineet, you said that Orkut, you were from the days of Orkut. So for Umang and Harsh, which are the first social media platforms that you used in your initial days? So what was your first interaction with the technology called social media? Or you didn't remember it as a social media, but was the first thing that you tried your hands on? Maybe Yahoo Messenger or Facebook was the one, or Orkut, Scrap. I think MySpace was also there. So which was the one that you used? Umang?
Okay, so I do remember using Yahoo Messenger as a child, but then came Orkut. But to be honest, Facebook was the first platform wherein I got my hands on the platform and I was trying each and everything possibly that I could. And I think this Facebook was a very big motivating factor wherein I very well knew, okay, online marketing is what I wanted to do. So when I see Facebook then and when I see Facebook now, the content consumption has increased or it has changed so vastly that the level of engagement then was a lot easier and getting ROIs too. But now it's a very different ballgame together.
Understood. Great. Vineet, your first experience with social media? Sorry, Harsh.
Yeah. So I agree. I think I was on Awkward. I think very very briefly, but I think my first proper memory of social media is definitely Facebook. This is I think probably when I was in the 11th or the 12th. So a lot of free time, obviously, lots of friends just having fun, and that was the pre-WhatsApp days, right? So you basically
Yeah,
had phone calls. You used to usually call on landlines because no one wanted to really use up their prepaid balance on phone
balance.
calls. So you see basically SMSs, phone calls, and I think Facebook was definitely a way of keeping in touch with friends. Although it wasn't a social media platform as such, I also remember using MSN significantly back in the day because MSN was basically our version of WhatsApp. Like it's free messaging basically.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I think that's definitely my first memory. Yeah, it was a lot simpler back in the day. I remember you had random stuff like graffitis was one thing which I clearly remember, where you could actually draw graffitis and leave them on each other's walls.
yeah.
I don't think Facebook messaging was a thing, which may come as a surprise to a lot of people listening. I don't think Facebook messaging existed back in the day. I think the whole concept of notifications, everything was very, very different. And I'm actually struggling to kind of picture what Facebook looked like back in 2005, 2006. But yeah, that's probably my first memory of social media.
Okay, great. The next question is this question was just to make sure that our audience also understands that all the people have used a lot of things and they come from the era when social media was not called as such social media. So just to make the thing settings right. So in the last 2-3 months that we have seen with lockdown also there, so there has been a lot of increase in the consumption of data patterns. Okay, so people are increasing daily consuming a lot of content every day because most of them are inside. So what is something that you all have seen with your basically companies, and what is the pattern that you are seeing? So a particular thing is increasing, or people are spending more time on Facebook for your particular clients, or maybe your social media. What are the changes that you are seeing? So let us begin with Vineet.
Yeah, thanks, Sahil. Before I actually answer that question, I want to thank you for making me feel very old.
Oh,
So, because I'm the only one who mentioned Orkut and everything else, like blast from the past. So,
no, that is not the case. We need experience also in the lineup. That is the thing.
so I'll give you a background in terms of what we had done and what we're doing. So, coronavirus came as a shocker. I mean, things were actually pretty okay till Feb in the travel space. So, just a quick recap: I run a travel tech venture called Scout My Trip, and of course, you can check it out. But I don't want to get into what the business does. But the what we have seen is the people consuming content that's still happening. There's no change in how people are consuming content. But any brand which was affected by coronavirus, it basically had two options to do anything in this situation. One is to either get into the conversation, but on a very empathetic level, because if any brand missed out on that one key aspect in content, which is empathy, they were very very harshly dealt with by people who are listening online or their consumers or customers. Or the second option was to shut up. We took the second option mainly because as a brand we were more cheeky, we were more informative, and we informative about places to travel to and so on. So we took a conscious decision in terms of not to speak too much in this situation, because people were seeking out content related to travel purely through search and not through discovery. So people who were finding that, looking for that content found it, which is where all the work we had done in SEO over the years really helped. In fact, our traffic has gone up on our blog, on our website. We're getting a lot of inquiries from people one on one because nobody wants to put it out in the open that they are looking to travel sometime. There is a social stigma associated with planning a trip at this point. I mean, that's a reality we're waking up to right now. So that's what we're seeing right now. So the team is still occupied. They're still busy. They're still talking to customers, but no bookings are happening. Only conversations are happening. So we're using this time to actually build more one-on-one relationships with our customers. So that's what has really changed in the way we are doing business for the last 1 month or engaging with customers. Now, where we see this going in the coming months, only time will tell. But one thing that I do know is that brands will have to wake up to the fact that empathy is going to be a very crucial part of any marketing that they do. And that is going to be very crucial for any brand which has to effectively or emotionally connect with the consumer. That's what I have seen.
Okay. Harsh, what are the patterns that you have seen?
Definitely. So one very, very interesting trend which we've noticed, I think, over the last couple of months, or at least in the last 1.5 months, is obviously with people staying back at home right now, people working from home. Your schedule has kind of changed, right? Back in the day when you were going to office, you had more of a fixed routine. I think people's routines now definitely have changed. This is something we've actually seen based on what time our posts do well and what time our posts used to do well back in the day.
Yeah.
So pre-lockdown, I think two sort of spikes that we had as far as website hits and social media was concerned was one used to usually, I think, be between about 10, 11 a.m. in the morning, which is probably when a lot of people are just on their way to work. And the second was usually at about 9 or 10 in the evening once people are probably done with their work for the day, they're probably done working out and just relaxing at home. We've actually seen those sort of peaks change now to one is about 12, 1 in the afternoon. I'm assuming people probably wake up, work for a couple of hours, and then take a break. The second peak that we've seen is at about 4 to 5 p.m. Again, I'm guessing people are probably just taking some sort
Nap
of
and
time out in the evening just to probably catch up with friends, spend some time on social media. So we've also actually kind of consciously tried changing when we put out posts and when we put out stories to kind of time ourselves with when our audience is available on social media. That's definitely one sort of interesting change that we have seen. Also, I think Vineet brought up a very, very good point about how brands should communicate. I think there is definitely that temptation, I think, to kind of jump in on something that is topical. There is definitely that temptation to be seen as a brand that has an opinion on a topic as sensitive as this. But I think it's a very, very fine line. Like Vineet said, his brand is a brand, for example, that is more cheeky, is more informative. If they suddenly started putting out very, very sort of emotional content about the situation, it might not really go with the brand, and you'll probably have people calling them out as bandwagoners, right? I think this is something that a lot of brands do need to realize, that if you do not have something meaningful or something empathetic to add to the situation, I think customers and followers would prefer you not communicating rather than communicating for the heck of it. So I think that is something that brands consciously need to realize, that sometimes it's okay to not have an opinion. I don't think our followers expect us to have opinions on every single thing that happens out there, but it's very, very important to kind of trust your followers to respect their intelligence and their emotional intelligence, and only, I think, speak when you have something useful to offer to them.
great. I think most of the brands are consciously or unconsciously trying to understand that fact that empathy is going to be there in the future also, and in today's time it is required a lot. So maybe
Definitely.
some of them are copying others in a way, not understanding that what they are doing. But most of the people around are now understanding. Okay, we do not have to do this. Or there are a few brands who don't understand this, but yeah, most of them are falling into line. Umang, what is your experience with the whole thing which has been?
I think Harsh and Vineet, both of them have covered quite a few points. But then, if I have to summarize my experience when it comes to the Social Mango being a B2B agency and the Tentacle being into B2C domain, I can very well tell you that the way in which people are consuming data for the Social Mango has changed. So Harsh has mentioned about the timings, like daily post based on the days, the timings that did well initially, but since past 2 months, the schedule has been so I would say weird in all our lives, that majority of the people, they tend to be online between, so in our domain is from 12 to 2 instead of around 9 to 11, you know. And in the afternoon again, it was during lunch, so pre-lunch, post-lunch. But now the same timing has shifted towards 4 to 6. And then at night, obviously, we don't get much of attraction because people are not on online. So for us, it is more of, LinkedIn and Twitter, and maybe a bit of Instagram story when it comes to the Social Mango. Now, when I talk about my clients, I think both of them, every one of you, each one of you, you've mentioned about there is a fine line, the kind of stuff that you should post during this pandemic or not. So it becomes very difficult for us as an agency to explain it to our clients that so if you are into a certain domain, is it viable for you to just use this cause and say, hey, view this, hey, buy this? So this was a very big concern for us when it came to certain issues like these. So I think, like Vineet said, you need to take a decision, as in, are you going deep down into the topic and are you talking about it, or you're choosing to ignore? So this is what we've been struggling with the clients as well. Now, when it comes to the tender curve, what I have noticed is that the engagement level amongst the customers and the viewers have gone up immensely. But then they are not converting into sales. They are they're more towards the empathy, human grounds, wherein we are sharing posts on depression, we are sharing a few insights upon, handling your ego, how to keep yourself motivated during lockdown. So initially there was a lot of stuff and interaction that we used to do, hey, buy this product indirectly, but now it is more on the empathy and just taking them through the stage. So it is more about being with them during the whole journey rather than pushing them or indirectly promoting our products on a daily basis.
Okay. Those were some great insights. The thing which I do, or why we are doing this, is I wanted to learn new things for the team also. So I gave them the task of doing online videos and tutorials which are there. But we had a 20-hour task because most of our clients, we lost them due to this pandemic. But then we saw that people were not consuming those kind of content directly. So then there was some other reason for doing the summit, and then we started off. And most of the employees of the company and then their friends and everybody, they are online, they are seeing the content, somebody understands something. So I think the live content consumption patterns have changed. So if we see uh, before the time, if someone wanted to learn something, they used to go to the classroom and then learn things. But now people are consuming content at their own pace. So you have Udemy, you have Coursera, you have other things also. But then there are a lot of webinars going around just now, where people, so we are also in one of the webinars. There are other people who are doing the webinars and those kind of things. So for now, for each industry that you are working in, what are the platforms that you feel that are something that yeah, this is the platform that is currently booming, and if you are targeting this TG, then you should go in this platform. Suppose for, if we say sales or for Soul Store, is TikTok the right platform for you guys to start doing advertisements or not, and those kind of things? So
Okay,
I'll
so
start with Harsh.
sure. So I think from the various social media platforms that we have spoken about, definitely I think from a reach point of view, from an engagement point of view, as well as from a sales point of view, as far as ads are concerned, I think over the last year or two, Instagram has definitely been the most successful for us. Definitely, TikTok. I think TikTok from a consumption point of view is obviously a very high engagement, very high viewership platform, undoubtedly. But specifically, I think as far as advertising on TikTok is concerned, I think that is still in a very nascent stage regarding how to basically target your audiences, how to define your audiences. So while TikTok does have a significant viewership and a significant user base, purely from an advertisement point of view, I think Instagram still remains our preferred
Primary.
social media platform, definitely. And yeah, like you were basically mentioning, I think, like Umang had mentioned, even in our communication, we've definitely, I think, reduced the product pushes or the product communication significantly. We have focused a lot more on putting fun content out there, definitely, because obviously for the last 1.5 months things have shut down. We're obviously not shipping out products as of now, so it doesn't really make sense to kind of push products to customers if we're not in a position to fulfill those orders. So definitely the kind of communication has changed to a lot more fun kind of content. Obviously, people associate our brand in general with pop culture. So
Yeah.
even when we are talking about the situation, we are talking to people about different habits that you can inculcate, different things that we can do from our end. We've always tried incorporating like a fun pop culture angle, because we've never been the brand that's very preachy that tells people what to do. So I think we've always kind of tried drawing that balance between doing some good out there for the people, tying up with certain organizations as well. So we've converted our manufacturing unit to make cotton masks, and we are basically selling them to donate them for a good cause. All the profits do go to the PM Cares Fund. But what we have ensured is that whenever we do put out this communication, we always do it in a fun way, and that brand language and that brand tone always remains what it was. I think if we suddenly start becoming very goody two shoes and we start becoming very preachy, I think there will be a disconnect which our audience will realize. So it's very, very important to stick true to your brand and your voice, even if you are trying to communicate something that's slightly different.
Okay. Umang, what are the things that you have seen? Because you are working on a B also, and then B2C also. So which are the platform, or what you are seeing, that these are the platforms that are going to hit a lot with the content, and these are the ones which are, like you mentioned, Twitter and LinkedIn are something for B2B. So
Yes.
likewise, what are the things that you are seeing in future?
Okay, so when it comes to the social mango, to be honest, LinkedIn has been a great motivator for us. But of lately, I feel the engagement has drastically gone down. So if I were getting, say, 100 interactions in the past month, the interactions I feel now have come down to around 50. And I am not saying that people are not online, but it's just that they are not interacting, even though they're seeing, even though there are impressions. So I feel LinkedIn, yes, for sure. When it comes to B2C marketing, I feel for Instagram and TikTok, especially Snapchat, the interactions have increased. So if your brand is doing wonderfully on those three platforms, yes, there has been a slight little change, but I feel it is not that drastic as it has affected the B2B industry when I compare it with all the B2C domains. So
Okay,
that is how I'd like to put it.
great. Vineet, what are the patterns that you have seen in the consumption of social media platforms? If
So the one platform that really worked for us, now I know a lot of travel brands really rely on Instagram because it's kind of more visual and things like that. But what really worked for us and will continue working for us even more so after coronavirus kind of things get better is going to be Quora for us. Quora had always been, right up there in terms of the highest traffic source for us, organic or inorganic. We spent a lot of money on Quora advertising. It really
okay,
worked because, and here is where I think I'll have to kind of explain our business model. We're not an online travel agent which lets you book hotels and flight tickets and train tickets. We're not doing that. We connect travelers with locals who kind of have a conversation with them and build itineraries for them which are personalized and curated. It's very conversation led. In fact, we were very proud that it's more of human intelligence and less of artificial intelligence. So Quora was very crucial for us for building those conversations. So, and we followed the freemium approach. People asked a question, we gave a bit of an answer, like 50% we got there, and the rest of it they had to kind of go for the paid service. This is going to be all the more important after things get better because people have more questions, and people are not going to ask questions on Instagram or of course Facebook groups. To be honest, is our biggest competitor. But Quora is as a platform is where we're going to be investing more time in terms of not just money but also human resource.
okay,
Vineet, I have a point here. So I like not sorry, Sahil. I have a point here. I like what Vineet has mentioned about Quora. So recently, what I've noticed is that, and I'm sure each and every marketers or you guys freshers out there, you must have noticed there is this a big change in algorithm when it comes to Instagram, when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to Twitter. So initially, when the whole platform started, the platform was more into showcasing, more to us about the family, what a family is posting, our friends are posting. But with time, the algorithm has changed so drastically that all we see is like 60-70% is everything about brands. So and again, since these guys are again changing the whole algorithm, so Quora is a key. I think it is one of the most undermined, I would say, platform here in India, because for Vineet it does well, and I'm sure if there is so for my recommendation is that if you have a team member who is free or who has a bit of time, probably you can focus on certain elements and you can ask them to be on Quora. So I know quite a lot of people who are on Quora. If you want to buy shares, if you want to talk about anything and everything, it works quite well.
okay, great. So just to add my bit here, so if you are in any business, or if you have a brand where people don't understand it very easily, or there are things where FAQs are more, I think Quora will be somewhere that you can go. So suppose somebody is buying a software or collaboration tools and those kind of things online, so they might go on Quora, and they might read which are the best online softwares to for collaboration, because they are doing just now. So which are the best softwares for task management, and those kind of things. So if they are visiting some place, they might go and search on there that what are the best places to see there, and those kind of things. So depending on your niche, your market, I think everybody needs to understand that because everybody is saying that this platform is having more users, that does not mean that more users. So from our personal experience, we get a lot of downloads from Pinterest for an app which is for moms, rather than any other platform, by spending also. If we don't spend on Pinterest also, then also we are getting good conversion and good returns from there. So it all depends where your audience is and how likely are they going to engage with that. So a B2B company when goes to TikTok, it will be a difficult ask for them to get conversion, but for LinkedIn it will be easy ask for them to get conversion and those kind of things. So I will ask Harsh in that way. Harsh, are you all targeting just the younger audience, or there are ways you are trying to target the older audience also, and if yes, through which mediums?
Okay. So I think our absolute core TG is about 18 to 24, and about I think about 70% plus falls into the 18 to about 35 category. It's about 70%. I think what we've obviously I think we've always been a youth brand with the kind of products, the kind of designs, the kind of language we speak. Definitely a youth targeted brand. What we have, however, seen is the reason we still get about 25 to 30% that goes beyond the age group of 35 is we have certain sort of massy properties, like we have cricket, like we basically work with a couple of IPL teams. Now when it comes to something like the IPL is not really, your fan base is not defined by age. You have parents taking their children, you have lifelong fans of Sachin and Dhoni and Virat and all these guys who are 35, 40, 45, 50, 60 as well, right? So I think cricket is definitely one of the things that has helped us break that sort of youth barrier and reach out to an older audience. Working with Bollywood movies is another thing that has kind of helped us expand our age group. And I think the third very massy property I think that we have worked with is WWE. Now I think most of us, I think growing up, have basically spent our childhood coming back from school and watching wrestlers beat each other up for fun. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of people our age and people older than us have kind of grown up watching WWE. So definitely, I think there is that sort of connect. And even if you take superheroes, which is another big sort of chunk of our designs, you do have a lot of, again, people from our parents' generation who have kind of grown up watching these movies and reading these comics. So while we are largely, I think, a youth brand, we still get a lot of people even at our offline stores who are parents who are probably coming to buy something for their children and themselves.
Okay, great. So my the next question which I am going to ask, why I asked this. So we all sometimes know that if we want to target people from a age group of 25 to 35, or from 18 to 21 or 25, we know that these are the mediums where we need to target. So with your experience, how do you target people with content, basically for age group higher than 35? Because sometimes what happens is, my suppose I take example of my father. He uses Facebook a lot, he uses WhatsApp a lot, but then sometimes he does not understand there is an ad in between while he's scrolling, and those kind of things. They
True.
use YouTube a lot. But which are the platforms that you all, if have faced in any way? I will start with Umang. So for your clients, if they want to target people from 30 more than 35 and through content, which are the platforms that you are using or
Okay,
have used?
okay. So you're asking what platforms do my clients use?
Or generally, what will be your suggestion if somebody from the our attendees wants to market to people who are more than 35? So what will be the platforms that they need to be on or do things?
Okay, so I think it's a very broad question. So if I have to target to people as the social mango, what I would do is that I would be majorly on LinkedIn, and followed by, I would say, Instagram. I know Instagram is quite off since a B2C tool, but then
Yeah.
surprisingly we get a lot of valid fan base. Now, the other part of this answer is that so if I were say any e-commerce industry, or if I am some other brand, so depending upon the industry the platform changes. So if you can just give me an example, and maybe then I can give you a direct solution.
Okay.
uh,
Suppose
yeah.
Dabur is there, and or
Mm-hmm.
Patanjali is there. So
Mm-hmm.
mainly these brands are targeting the higher age group. Okay. So they won't be targeting me for taking decisions.
Obviously.
So if such brands or if we are targeting such products for a company,
Mhm.
then how can we reach the audience which is over 35? Or what are the ways in which we can convince them that this is the right product? So suppose if Ramdev Baba is coming on TV and doing those things
Okay.
because their consumption is high, but what are the other ways in which if we want to reach people we can?
Okay, so I think for Patanjali, I'm not sure if the whole social media, all
Works.
it would work or not. But then what I can say is that if they were to do something like this, and I'm not sure if everyone knows video is the next thing in marketing. So people would see lesser post and they would see more of a video
More
if you
video.
want to get more of an interaction. And I feel Mr. Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, he has done the same. So he has tried to capture the whole market, irrespective of if the person is 18-year-old or 65, 80-year-old. He goes live quite often. So I feel video marketing is a very undermined tool. So even if you want to target someone who's about 35, I would say you can go for Facebook, because Facebook is one tool wherein even my grandfather, my father, my siblings, everyone is there. But when it comes to Instagram, again, the technicalities are so complicated. And besides, you mentioned that even your father gets confused and he does not understand if it's a sponsored ad.
Hmm.
So I feel, again, depending upon the industry, I can be more precise. But if you have to ask me something which a certain platform which does wonders for anyone who's about 35, I think it can be Facebook.
Yes.
A bit though of YouTube, if you can optimize all your tags properly. And maybe on LinkedIn, it can on in the B2B sector, it can be LinkedIn, depending
Oh,
upon how you marketed, the keywords that you're using it, the time on which you're posting, the days you're posting, and the frequency of posts, obviously.
okay. Vinit, what is your take on this? So if you is in your industry, are you targeting people over 35 in that case?
So they are our primary customers. So I'll
Okay.
just kind of put my thoughts on this. I feel that for any business, Google is your new homepage. I mean, that is where people begin, that is where they end. No matter what kind of problem they're trying to solve for themselves, Google is the new homepage, essentially. That's something we have to live with now. I mean, it's not going to change. In fact, with the higher age groups and our customers, we have seen that people love searching for information. So, in fact, there are two key trends when it comes to search that I'm going to see really spike. One is voice search. So people are going to be searching more through voice, and that's something that we have also seen. And when people search with voice, their keywords are typically longer. Like on your phone, would you type 4 words or would you speak in 20 words? So people speak 20 words when they're doing voice search. So how do you cater content for voice searches which are longer in format? So which means when it comes to SEO, you'll focus more on long tail. That's one. Second, that's really worked is regional language. In fact, majority of traffic in India are Hindi speaking audience and people are searching in local languages. And that is one big area that we are kind of ignoring. In fact, for any brand which wants to kind of go out of India as well, or even want to establish better in India, they need to not translate their content, but transcribe their content. I mean, it has to be very properly written by a translator. And so language one, voice search two, because I think higher age groups, they spend more time searching for information because they're looking for precise answers. The other thing which I feel will really work for this audience and age group is they are heavily on WhatsApp. So what we have seen work for us also is infographics. They get shared a lot on WhatsApp groups. In fact, one of the things that we did was look tap into these WhatsApp admins and these groups, and they love sharing images and infographics. That really worked. The other thing which I for some reason is still not really picked up well in India, although there is a lot of noise, is podcasting. In fact, if you look at the 35 and above age group, a lot of them commute to work by car, by road.
Yeah.
However, podcast is a great medium for you to reach that audience because they usually, commuting for work, they're under a lot of stress and they want to listen to something different. And radio has a lot of noise, a lot of ads, which is where podcasts come in. And that really works for this audience. So, that's my suggestion to anyone who wants to kind of look at this audience to one, get their SEO game up and running. Voice search is going to be very, very big this year. Regional language searches second. Third, you need to look at infographics. I know there is a lot of talk about video, but infographics is how you break into those WhatsApp groups, how you break into those circles that 35 plus and 48 plus people are into. They love sharing these images. And of course, audio, because these people are very busy in life. They're usually senior folk in whichever industries they are in, and they'd want information to be presented while they're multitasking. Audio, hence podcasts.
Okay, those are some great insights that I think I also understood today. So I never knew that. I was living in Vijayawada, so my landlord was there, and his son gave him a very nice smartphone. I think it was OnePlus 6 or something. And then he used to always speak. देखो ये बोलता हूँ ना तो ये जवाब देता है. देखो मैं सर्च करके बताता हूँ तुमको. So I can relate that. Okay, now that guy learned that thing, and now he's using it every day. And maybe our higher age group does not know how to type fast and those kind of things. So maybe that can be a helpful tool. So a great insight. Thanks a lot, Vineet, for that. Extending this question to a bit more, that while we are seeing content patterns also change a lot. So maybe sometimes for Soulstore or for Umang, the things that you are doing, has writing the local language content helped you in getting more conversion, or is that the reverse for each of your brands? So suppose Umang, you are working with Z, so Z has a lot of you are working with Z5 for the tool, or mainly Z?
I'm working for Z5 and we are working for Z Global Content Sales. So the question that
Okay.
you've asked with respect to different languages,
Languages.
I think it would relate more with Z Global Content Sales.
Yeah.
I won't talk about it more, but then I'll tell you one little
Just some
discussion that
insight.
we had
Yeah.
with the team. So here when you see any property which is online, say any series, okay, or any movie that has, say, Houseful, which has already released, okay, what do you do post that? What would you do with that video content? You would sell it to the countries, like you would share it with other people in the different parts of the world who can see the same movie, NRIs all over, right? So one big issue that happened was that so we were discussing that if I have to, say, talk about a certain property, online property, should I write it in Dutch and or promote it on one platform, or should I also write it in Hindi? Should I also write it in Spanish for all the countries to understand? Uh, there is a so as you know, if there is one brand who's globally available, who's there globally all over, you cannot have different brand pages, say Asia, Africa, America, and stuff like that, and you cannot also type in the languages. It is always preferred that you have one page on which everyone is communicating, right? So if I'm giving perhaps more emphasis, or if I'm writing more in Hindi, I'm writing more in English, I'm writing more in some other language, so the key message gets distorted somehow. And as we all know, English is the sole language for their particular functioning. So we decided that we would continue in English, because what happens is that maybe even though we have translators, right, and the people who are working for the brand in, say, X country, at times we would not be able to get the human sentiments right. So for me, for example, it is very common for us to say, oh yaar, oh shit, kya ho gaya karke, but then we cannot say the same, lingo or something like that in some
Yeah.
other country. So to prevent all these fiascos that could have happened, it is very much necessary, it was very much necessary for the brand to use one language which was acceptable all over. This is the experience when it comes with one particular brand. And I'm sure what Vineet and Harsh have to say, it will be a lot different, because when it comes to linguistic content, I think they will be much more profound to talk about it.
Yeah. So Harsh.
Sure. So I think yes. I think there was a very very interesting point for sure regarding using different languages. I think to target people, because obviously when you have so many different languages being spoken in the country and people are comfortable typing and speaking in multiple
Yeah.
different languages, it is a very important question about should you use English as a language, as a blanket language for everyone, or should you kind of tailor communication. We've actually run this experiment of ours with a couple of ads in the past. So when we were targeting people from different states, based on where we get. For example, if you get more WWE sales from a particular state, or you get more Marvel sales from a particular state. We had tried a couple of ads, and we had done a few tests where we kind of changed the language for certain ads when we were targeting people from certain states. A couple of interesting insights we saw was there was definitely a lot higher engagement, I think, on those ads, because I think people do feel a lot more comfortable when they see their language. They feel a lot more connected, I guess, with the brand and with the communication. So we definitely saw a lot more engagement. We saw a lot more people clicking on those ads. But interestingly enough, we actually saw that the eventual conversions on our website did drop. The one sort of reason I could think of is when you see an ad or when you see a communication from a brand in your local language. Obviously, there is that interest that does speak, right? Because you are seeing someone speak your language. So there's a lot more comments, there's a lot more likes, there's a lot more people clicking. But when they do click on that particular product and they do come to a website where everything is obviously in English, I would assume that they do feel a bit of a disconnect where you've kind of seen the ad and the communication in one language,
Yeah.
and then the eventual website and the product in a completely different language with a very funny, young pop culture sort of tone. So yeah, I think probably as far as communication is concerned, I think people would engage more. But specifically from the sole source point of view, I think we have seen a drop in conversions because obviously our entire website is in English. So that's been the experience we've had with trying to use local language to target people.
Okay. So I think connecting the whole cycle is something that we can understand from what Harsh said. So if you are targeting people in local language, then when they are landing on your page, that should also have that feel only. So
True.
somebody should not feel that exterior of the home was something else, and then we go into interior, it is something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you
That's
bring
probably
them, when you bring them with something, then you always have to complete the loop in that language only. Okay, great. So I think my time's up mostly, and we will have to take questions from people now. And guys, if you have any questions, you can ask in Q&A segment. I think Malhar bhai had a question. Okay, yeah, Vinit has answered it in the chat box itself. There is a question. So guys, if you there are questions, and if you can upload those questions, I will be asking them first. So there was a question to Harsh. How was your response to Rohit Shetty t-shirt sale, which was yesterday? Asking this to understand consumers' willingness to buy products even though they are going to receive it 15-30 days later.
okay. So I think this is a question that we've. I mean, it's a very interesting question for sure. We have obviously, I think, like most of the other brands in the country, I think we probably stopped shipping around the 20th or the 21st of March. So it's been over a month. I think one thing that was extremely important for us as a brand was to basically be very clear with our communication and be very honest. So obviously, once the lockdown did start, we kind of completely stopped our marketing. And then when we slowly started running ads as well and driving more website to our traffic and to our app, one thing that we were very clear about in our communication, in our ads on our homepage, was the fact that we are accepting orders right now, but we will not be able to ship them till the lockdown gets over. We've actually received a lot of positive responses on our ads and on our social media posts as well. And I think people appreciate the fact that a brand is being very transparent and honest. So the sale that we had yesterday for Rohit Sharma's jersey, it actually did very well. And I think right now, more importantly, I think most people kind of understand that if you're not providing an essential item, there are going to be certain delays as far as shipping is concerned. There are going to be certain roadblocks. Things are not going to be as smooth as they were 1 or 2 months earlier. And I think as long as you can maintain that open sort of transparent communication, I think people are a lot more sympathetic to brands than we give them credit for. So we have actually we've seen a pretty good the sales were pretty good yesterday, I think, and I think it was very important. Even when Mumbai Indians actually promoted the product for us, which is something that's done really well, where because we have so many national and international partners, we have these guys regularly promoting us as well to their audience, which kind of really helps us from a marketing and sales point. And even Mumbai Indians has been very clear that we are shipping out the products only after the lockdown gets over. So once you set someone's expectations right, I think things just go well.
Okay. Telling the truth is something that I think.
Yes, I think it's very important.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a question. I think with from Rahul. So it's an open question. So with work from home scenario increasing, when employees are used to work from home, so there would be many employees who would be suitable with this schedule. So when lockdown ends and when employees are required to attend office, so how will this change or affect business? Also, there is a shift in trend of people viewing data, like the time of data viewing. So how will this affect the businesses, and what can the businesses do? So I think it will be open for most of you. So the Vinit, you work remotely or you work from office? So I know rest of both work from office, but what about you?
Yeah. So, I'm going to give everybody and all the 92 people who are tuned in a bit of an insight. So, till 2020 March, working from home, had the stigma associated with, and people assume that if you're working from home, you're wearing this light vest of sorts, and in your boxers, and you're in front of a computer. All of it is mostly true, but I've typically, been a very big advocate of work from home. In fact, right from Indie Blogger. In fact, Indie Blogger, when we started in 2007, four guys, four bloggers, and we used to program, market, do everything on our own. We were in 4 different parts of the country, and the only way for us to work was through phone calls and to kind of log on to Google Chat or a Yahoo Messenger chat room. So that's how we worked. In fact, Indie Blogger, even while it was at its peak in 2014-15, we had a 15-member team. We were all working from home. We never had an office, because the way we thought was, and this is the way we thought as a startup, instead of spending money on an office, can we work remotely and put that into marketing, put that into something else? But work from home is going to be the new normal. To answer that question, that we got, is going to be the new normal. People will accept that there is a way to be productive while you're working from home. In fact, people will start putting in checks and measures to see what all tasks people complete in a day. There is this tendency to slack, definitely, but people will try to figure out ways to be more productive about it. In fact, even with Scout My Trip and the vast network of locals and scouts all over India, it's work from home. I mean, and you can make it work. The only way you have to kind of make it work is by using technology better. I mean, we are right now in a marketing summit and all of us are at home, right? I mean, there is no cost that was spent on a banquet hall or, things like that. So people will wake up to this, and companies will have to evolve and wake up to this, that this is going to be the new normal, at least for the next 1.5 years. And by that time, they will have to put in work from home policies, like for real, in their company policies. They will have to put it. And a certain number of days, I feel, might even be given as work from home officially for the entire company. Because one key revelation that has come, and when I talk to my corporate friends, is people start work earlier when they're working from home, and they finish work later. This has been a very key revelation. And so it's no longer, 11:30 to 6, because that's the time you spend on commute. 10 to 11:30 is what you spend on commute. 6:30 to 8 is what you spend on commute. All that is gone. So you're spending less on traveling. You're using that time to work wherever you are. And by using messengers like Slack and Flock and so many out there, there is, again, I use the word stigma associated with you not responding to messages when they arrive. So if you are logged into your team messenger and somebody puts a message and you don't respond to it soon enough, people will assume that you're not working. So there is the stigma associated with you not responding to messages fast. So I've noticed that people are on their toes all the time. Actually, it's a blessing in disguise of what, but I've seen productivity go through the roof, at least in the areas that I'm kind of working and people I know.
Okay. Umang, about you?
I was so deep into Vinit's conversation. Can you please repeat the question?
So he has this way of storytelling, I think, Vinit.
Yeah. I was just lost
I
into it.
am so sorry. I ramble a lot. So, Sahil, if I start rambling, just tell me to shut up. I will shut up.
So we are so engaged. I also passed on to Umang. That's why मैं फिर से question करना पड़ेगा कुछ Umang को देते हैं. So that is my mindset just now, because the way you explain things with scenarios and with the real life examples, I think it is very interesting, and we are just hooked on to that. Okay, let us hear.
Yeah.
Whereas we might not miss some insights that he is saying. Okay, so the question was, Umang, with so you are handling a startup, so you are handling a social media agency.
Mm-hmm.
So people say, okay, IT का काम है तो वो घर से हो
हाँ.
जाता है, ठीक है. But then what we have faced is, though we are doing the work, but when it comes to designing and those kind of things,
Yeah.
you need people around so that the to and fro decreases. So what has been your experience just now, and what do you think things will change in the future? Because creating content is going to be difficult.
I'll be both of us. We sail in the same boat, and I think we have already discussed in our first telecall that we had last week.
Yeah.
So while the digital domain can be taken offline, we can work from home. But when it comes to creativity and brainstorming, it gets very difficult. So I'll tell you. So at in our offices, we have a high-end desktop wherein our designers work, without any disturbances. But however, the output or the rate at which we get a certain output, I think it has increased. So if I'm getting a creative done in like 30 minutes, it is taking me an hour to do it. All right,
Okay.
this I'm only talking about the internal creatives slash the marketing images guys that I'm talking about. Now when it comes to client work, so what happens is that when we are working in a team, we tend to brainstorm about it, together. So the digital team will give us an overview, the graphics team will give us an overview, I'll be there to discuss it, and then we just finalize it on the spot. Here what happens is that how much ever we use Zoom, we use Jira as a agile networking platform or anything, there's so much of gap between the information that goes to and fro. So if the designer is making an image and the person is like, "Umang, can you please confirm or can you please approve?" I'll be like, "Okay, I'm just coming. Don't send it to me. It'll waste a lot of time though."
Yeah.
So here we are, the person is downloading it and the files are extremely heavy. They upload it on the drive. We again approve it. We send it to the client. So I feel digitally, yes, we can go offline, but when it comes to creative work, unless and until you have lots of funds and you can invest in a lack of machines like in each one of places, and then so I think it certainly wastes a lot of time. So I'm having a very hard time, I would say. Initially I was, when I had to align my digital team, my clients, and my graphic team all together. Because if the conversion rate for the output was like say 45 minutes or for an hour, now it's taking us even 3 or 4 hours, because even the client, they're finding it very difficult, to set up at home, and then again they have to take approvals from their superior who is again in some other place. So the whole leveling and the functioning stages is just off as of now.
Okay. So the blocks have increased a lot. That is what I
Yeah,
can say.
a lot, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
Actually, sorry, just to add to what Umang said, I think definitely when we try splitting work as stuff that can be done from home and stuff that is probably happens better or faster in an office, definitely I think the creative process in general, like even for us, for example, when we are thinking of fun posts to do, fun communication to put out, it is a collaborative effort where you have the marketing team, you have the design team, in some cases you have the photographers and the videographers as well, and everyone is basically coming together to put some sort of creative output. I think in that sort of situation, definitely, I think people working together from a single space makes things happen a lot faster and a lot more convenient. Adding to what Vineet said about brands being in a way forced or brands having to work from home, I actually think a lot of brands will kind of or a lot of companies will kind of reevaluate the current structure. I think what a lot of us have realized is that it is very very convenient and very possible for us, or at least for certain teams in our organizations, to work from home, and without obviously decreasing the productivity. And if you look at it, maybe say 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years down the line, I think a lot of brands will realize that you can actually save significantly on costs where you probably do not need 100% of your staff working out of office. I think in any case, even after the lockdown does kind of lift, there are going to be restrictions about how many people you can have in office at a time. There will be certain sort of social distancing regulations that will anyway be in place. So even after the lockdown gets over, I don't personally see our entire staff coming back to office immediately. They will probably be working in shifts or probably be working on alternate days. So there's probably going to be some sort of hybrid work from home, work from office model that we anyway implement. And I think brands are going to realize that there's a significant amount of costs that you can probably save by having part of your workforce working from home and a part of your workforce working from office, which will obviously reduce your office space and your office expenses significantly. Obviously, the biggest advantage for people who are working from home is that you do end up saving a lot of time and money that you would spend on travel. So I actually see this as a potential blessing in disguise. Maybe if not immediately, maybe a couple of years down the line, I think a lot of new companies that do start up will probably integrate this hybrid model from the beginning itself.
Okay. So other question extending to what we were discussing just now. So sometimes we say Indians professionalism is not there. Okay. So when so suppose somebody says that if you're working in Delhi, Bombay, then or Bangalore or Hyderabad, then you have few people who reply to you on time or do things. But when you come to tier 2, tier 3 cities, things like theek hai, chalta hai, hota hai attitude is a lot more. Okay. So do you think with work from home scenario, and when you say that there will be hard deadlines on things that are to be delivered, people will be more focused on what they have to do and deliver, will that increase or accountability will increase? That is the main question. So do you think that will happen? Anyone can take that up.
Can I start, because I have a
Yeah.
twist in the story. Okay, so I'm talking with respect to a B2B, full-fledged B2B marketing agency. So I'll tell you what happened. What happens?
Yeah.
I have clients in UK. Okay, I have clients in Australia. I have quite a few meetings in Dubai, Singapore, such areas. Okay, so
Yeah.
how do you manage a client who does not work according to
I-
IST? That is one. The second thing that you've spoken about is, do we get stuff right on time? Right, so when I started my agency here, initially I used to find it very difficult with the Indian clients, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but the Western working pattern is so different, I suppose, that it does not easily sit. But with time, it's been 3 years since I'm running the agency. What I've noticed is that people are getting a lot very professional, so we are very good adapters when it comes to technology. So even if my client is in some other country or in, say, some other city, and if we tell them, and if we are very much I say professional with them, and we tell them this is how we want it and this is the time for approval, I think if we get it on time. So it comes to the fact that despite it is not the country or the city, but the professional approach that a person is implementing when they are working on their own brand.
Okay.
That has been the experience for me. So that is why I told you I cannot talk about cities much. I can very well give an example about handling or managing a brand, who was not here.
Great insight. Vineet, your take?
Um, again, I don't. I think this being well answered. I am just trying to. I was going through a lot of questions, Sahil, right now,
Yeah.
and I think that some of them are really good, which I think all of us should take a crack at. There's
Yeah.
one very interesting question by Kunj Shah, and I think everyone will have their own perspective. I think so. The question is, if you're targeting exports and that too in B2B, what will you suggest about language and platform to be used? So my question, Kunj, on this to you would be: when you're exporting, you need to first figure out where your buyers are. So if your buyers are, say, in Brazil, language is going to be very crucial for you. So you might want to kind of build certain pages on your website which are in that language, or whichever country that you're kind of exporting to or your buyers are from. So that is, and when you're doing B2B marketing, your website is your homepage. Google is your homepage. So you need to remember that, and there needs to be a lot of content on your website so that Google can serve it better to them. So SEO is going to be very crucial for you, and language in the country where your customers are based is going to be the next important thing that you're going to be working on. So that would be my suggestion to you on B2B marketing, especially if you're into exports.
Okay. Great. So I think we can take more questions
Yes.
if diving into question answer. There's a question.
There was
Yeah, Vineet.
So there was one question which was addressed to me about travel sector bouncing back, and it's a very tough question to answer, to be honest. In fact, there was a notification to all travel companies saying that we need to cease operations for the next 3 to 4 months. And in fact, a lot of hotels in Himachal right now are looking at some kind of relief because Himachal, Uttarakhand, all these mountainous states, this is the season time. This is when hotels are booked fully and they're all empty at this point. So the travel industry is, to be very honest, in a bad situation at this point because people can't step out, but people can consume information on internet, uh, which is where I think travel companies will have to also change their business model a little. In fact, I think augmented reality is going to be very real for consumers in paid formats. And this could be, walks in a museum. This could be you going out to the mountains of Ladakh, and they could all be paid experiences based on content that people have created over the years. And we could be waking up to that in the coming few months in the travel space. In fact, there's so many guys who are actually working on augmented reality in the travel space right now. In fact, Google also has an application just for this. The other thing that I also feel, and all travel companies are keeping their fingers crossed, is, and I was talking about this before this webinar started, is something called revenge travel. And what it essentially means is when all this is over, things get better, people would want to step out of their homes with a vengeance. All the things that you have bottled up and been so frustrated about, you're going to start building your bucket list of places to see and do. People might actually end up traveling more. In fact, there's going to be so much fatigue from working excess hours thanks to work from home, and a lot of industries will be getting back on their feet. People will be stressed out. So revenge travel could actually be something real. So I hope I've answered that question. It is an anonymous question. Feel free to put your name out there. These are really good questions, very tough questions to answer. So I'd be happy to know who this is. I'm happy to connect with, with you whenever we can. Thanks.
Okay. So
thanks to the anonymous attendee for that.
Okay. So there is I think a question for Umang. It's, how did you keep your company's name Social Mango or Tender Curve? Like someone reads it and it does not exactly give you the idea what the company's main motive is. I think Harsh, you also would have been facing the
Exactly.
Yes, definitely.
So it's a funny question, but yeah, Umang, can you take it up?
Okay, so when I say Oreo, what comes to your mind? If I would not have told you it's a biscuit, you wouldn't know about it, right?
Yeah.
So according to me, the brand. So the reason why, so firstly, when you think of a brand name, it is not just yaar chalo hum kar lete hain, something like that. It is more of what you resonate with the most, because in the end it is your personality that goes in the brand. So I think Harsh has come out with a plan. Like, he came out with a brand because he was not getting a certain merchandising, and that is why he thought, I am going to find a solution for this, and the name of the solution would be a soul store. Similarly, for me, what I noticed was that with the Social Mango, so I didn't want to be very typical, wearing formals, and I didn't want to go to offices like that. I just wanted to wear shorts. I just wanted to be casual, and I wanted something quirky out of it, and that is why we came up with the names, social, which obviously is social media, and mango because we like mangoes a lot. So I know it is quite off, but that is my personality. That is what I resonate with the most. Now, when it comes to the tender cow, I'll tell you what happened. So one day at night, I tend to get a lot of ideas where, like, I'm just about to go to bed. So I was just thinking, while I was in Australia, while I was in UK, I realized that there's so many people who are into depression, who lack motivation and all of that, but no one talks about it. And so I was just thinking that this concept or this feeling is so delicate, and the only way that a person can go through their bad times is to take everything with a pinch of salt, make a decision and then just move on with it. So the tender means soft, and curve is the path of life. So even if you have road blockage, if you have speed breakers while you're driving, you still go on that road, right? So that is how you're supposed to take life as. So again, the tender curve, again, it has come from my personal experience, and I think I resonate with the brand more. And since I am the face of the brand, I think there's no one else who can explain, or who can easily or very viably convey the message as the founders or the co-founders. So it again, I think Sid was the name who had asked the question. So
Yeah.
Sid, if you want to come out with the name of the brand, don't think log kya kahenge. Let them think whatever they want to, as long as you connect with it, and as long as you feel your brand has the personality that you want, the feelings that you want to convey. So I think it should do justice. It's the concept that goes, not the name, if it's mango people or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great answer.
Yeah, I think just adding to what Umang said, I think she summed it up really well when she
Yeah.
said don't bother log kya kahenge. Because if you see the word sold, SOULED, it's actually a bit of a red flag because it's actually like a spelling error, right? Like you're taking an actual word and you're kind of spelling it differently. So there's a lot of potential mistakes. You know, like people say soul store or SOLD store. Like there's obviously a lot of potential mistakes, but obviously the thing is now once you kind of build a brand over the last 6 7 8 years, once people kind of know your company, I think if it matters more on what you're actually doing with the brand and how you are as a company. And I think if you're giving people something that they like, they will remember your company. We actually came up with this. We have obviously had a lot of people on social media asking us as well, like like why Soul Store, etc., etc. So we actually written like a long sort of why we've chosen this name on our website as well. But I think the shorter, slightly cliched answer was all four of us basically who started the company very simply put hated our previous jobs. Like no one was happy. Like Umang said, you just want to do something of your own where you can come, you can wear shorts, you can have this peace of mind, you can work at your own time, but basically do something that you actually enjoy doing, right? And I think for all of us, it was that decision where you say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something that I actually think I will enjoy doing. Obviously, we started off when we were pretty young, so you had age on your side. You had enough time to kind of make mistakes. Worst case, if something doesn't work out, you can always probably go back to your day job. So I think that's where the name the soul, I mean, that's where the word soul came from, and obviously store because we are selling various products. One of the names, interestingly, that we did come up with or that we were thinking of was the name Sleeves, because I think we initially kind of pictured this as a t-shirt brand. Initially, we only had t-shirts on our website, but the reason we didn't choose the name Sleeves is because we always wanted to kind of have that flexibility that, okay, what if you do some different product, right? What if you come up with something else later? So I think the only thing is don't restrict yourselves with your name. You'd rather have something that's quirky, you'd rather have something that's broader, rather than have something that's very specific and kind of ties you down to what you should do as a brand. So I think that's probably what our rationale was behind the Soul Store.
Yeah.
Great. I think Malar Bhai has a comment on that. That FC UK brand is there. It has all the potential reasons for going wrong, but still it's famous.
Exactly.
So yeah, it is about what you do, and a name comes next. Okay, so there is a question, Harsh. Have you ever used user-generated content for new designs of product lines at Soul Store, or asking people's design on voting in IG polls and those kind of things? Have you ever done that? And it's
Yeah,
a good question, I think, for the
definitely.
content generation.
I think it's a very good question, and I think it's extremely important to kind of get feedback from people, because eventually they are the people who are going to like your product. They are the people who are going to buy your product. So I think before we come to getting user generated feedback, even in general, when we are thinking of new products to launch, when we are thinking of new designs to launch, we have a very simple sort of philosophy where obviously like a lot of designs are subjective, right? I may really like something, I may absolutely dislike something, I may not buy it. But I think one thing which we kind of have realized is that we are not our audience, right? There are millions and millions of people out there, and just because we personally like something or do not like something is not probably the best factor to judge the potential of a design on. So as a first step, what we usually do is we have about 250 people in our organization. Whenever we are coming up with a new design or a new concept, we put it up on Slack. We first kind of get an internal feedback from everyone at the Soul Store, because a large percentage of our workforce is in their early and mid 20s, which is similar to what our audience is. As far as user generated content is concerned, we definitely use that a lot. We do a lot of teaser posts as well for new product launches just to kind of gauge what the response would be. We have actually done a lot of design your own t shirt contests as well. There have been situations in the past where we've actually gone ahead and made those t-shirts and sold them as well. And I think we have actually been blessed with a very, very enthusiastic and a very engagement friendly audience, where every time we put out any post, like I'll give you an example. There are times when we put out a post for say Mumbai Indians or Chennai Super Kings, and you'll have a lot of people saying, "Hey, can you launch an RCB jersey, please?" So I think our audience definitely is very vocal about what they like and what they don't like, and we've definitely used this not only to see what new designs or what new products to launch, but also to kind of gauge what the response to a product would be, what we should probably launch first, what we should probably launch later. And I think it's very, very important for brands to kind of have that regular back and forth and have that regular conversation, just to get an idea of what your audience expects from you. I think that's extremely important.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So we have another question from Malar Barai. To all the panelists, are you seeing content consumption fatigue, or is it just crappy content fatigue? Because a lot of content is being generated, so you have all the platforms now on videos. So suppose if we take example of OTTs also, you have a lot of series coming up, you have a lot of movies, so you have a problem of plenty in that way. So is there a content consumption fatigue? That is what he's asking. So who would like to take it up?
Should I answer?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Harsh, go ahead, yeah. I think.
No, just one quick thing to add. I don't think there is a situation of content fatigue. I think it's if you see the numbers in the last about say 4 to 6 weeks at least, after people have been working from home and after the lockdown, the amount of time people are spending on their smartphones has increased. The amount of time people are spending on social media has increased. The amount of time people are obviously consuming video content, whether it's YouTube or it's your OTT platforms, has increased. So I don't think there is a content fatigue problem. I think people in fact have more time. What has obviously increased, or rather what has decreased, is definitely people's attention span, and people are
Yeah.
definitely more spoiled for choice now, right? So if there are 100 shows coming out every day, if there are 100 new movies being launched, and if there are 1,000 brands spamming you with content every day, obviously as an audience, I think people are more picky. People are more particular about what they want to see and what they don't want to see. But I think on the other hand, because people have more free time right now, I think people always want to be entertained. So as long as you can give them good content that keeps them engaged and entertained, I think you will never have a problem of people wanting to spend more time on the internet. I don't think that is an immediate problem for sure.
No, yeah, what Harsh said is right. I think user retention is a big challenge right now, for especially for who someone who's in OTT and everything like that. So, just a quick point. I think that initially, the time that a customer used to spend to just read an article or go through, if I want to view it, was somewhere around 15 to 20 seconds. Now, in the past 1 month, I think it has gone down to around somewhere around 10 seconds. So, it's a very big challenge for content creators, mainly who are into videos, blogs and everything. So yes, for sure.
Great. So we have a question for Umang. With the current situation, do you see a shift to more clients diverting to digital marketing, or more people diverting to digital marketing?
More clients divert. Okay, so I'll tell you what the current scenario is. The agencies are not very much affected by this. The tender curve is affected because you're not shipping out anything,
Yeah.
but the agencies are not much affected. But there's a catch in this. Even though we are not getting business right now, or the leads are not getting converted right now, there is a very high chance that post the lockdown gets over, there will be many inquiries. In fact, we are getting inquiries right now as well, because first what we did was that we went to a client, or they came to us, and we used to talk, we used to consult them. But now they very well know the importance of going online. So I feel the business will definitely go up, because they understand it's not just social media, it's email, it's SEO, it's affiliate
Yeah.
marketing. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. And I suppose the decision makers, they have a very good time in hand, wherein even they are understanding. Initially what we used to get was that the managers, they used to tell us that they're not understanding, even if however we are trying to explain it to them, the importance, they're stuck on the budget. They used to give us a lot of reasons. But I suppose now, since it's right on their face, no one can deny the fact that digital is a new thing
Okay.
with a twist.
With a twist is something. Okay. So your views on using Telegram, please. It's an anonymous question. If we want to take it, then we can, or else we can skip to next. Anyone has used Telegram for communication or for outbound things, or making a channel, Telegram channel, and then posting content? Has any one of you have done it? Vineet, have you done it?
Yeah. So Telegram, is again one of those elephant in the rooms for a lot of marketers and for a lot of consumers out there, because Telegram has very limited restrictions when it comes to group sizes. The kind of controls it gives to an admin of a group, it's just insanely amazing. It's ridiculous how people have not started using it. For example, the government of India is using a Telegram broadcast list for Corona updates.
Yeah.
Why are they not using WhatsApp, or why are they not using any other medium, is because Telegram has no limits on a broadcast list. Last I checked, there was some 1.2 million people who had subscribed to it. Now tell me which other medium on mobile allows you to do that. Either you create a Facebook page and your feeds are throttled, or you create a Facebook page, again you fall into the trap of your feeds being throttled. Somebody has to log into the platform. Telegram, you get a mobile update, 1.2 million notifications delivered every time they send out an update. This is just amazing. In fact, a lot of brands today are moving into creating trust groups and communities for themselves. And Telegram has a very crucial role to play there, because Telegram allows you to create polls, allows you to set up administration hierarchy for your group, allows you to do a lot of things that you would expect from a group, or which Facebook should have done many years back. But Telegram has all of that on mobile. It's a mobile first experience. Of course, they have a web app also. So Telegram is going to play a very crucial role in building communities and trust groups. And if any brand wants to create higher retention with customers, they would want to kind of invest in Telegram in one way or the other. In fact, I feel that edtech platforms right now are using Telegram heavily to create self-learning groups.
Yeah.
And that's a trend that I've seen over the last few months. Why are they not using anything else? I mean, you need to use Telegram to figure out why. It's an amazing platform. I think everybody should kind of get onto it one way or the other.
So +1 for what Vineet is saying. We use Telegram for our internal communication. We don't use Slack or any other thing, because number one thing that why we shifted to Telegram was there is no limit on the file size. So you can send any file and anything. Plus also, we are not selling Telegram to everybody, but then those of you who want to use it, there are other things also. You get a lot of movies and those stuff also there. But for internal communication as a design team, we always felt that there's a lot of issues when we transfer files and the drive bhar jati hai, 15 GB ka space hai. But then on Telegram, it remains there forever. So we don't have to download it and keep it. So it's on their server, it's free. So then we don't mind that. So we don't have to buy anything else and those kind of things. And we there are a lot of other features. So if you go and use, everybody has a use case. So Quint and every other platform are using Telegram to broadcast their messages. So if you are into news and those kind of things, Telegram will be very useful if you start creating your channel there. So they had a WhatsApp channel also at a time. But then due to, I think in last December, the rules of broadcast changed by WhatsApp, and now they have moved to Telegram completely. So a lot of other people start with WhatsApp and then they shift to Telegram eventually. So that will be there. I think it's 10:26 and we can take a last, okay. We have
I think what we can do, Sahil, is that we can just spend like 30 seconds on each question. So only one speaker will talk. We can take it randomly.
Yeah. Sure. So
like not much. Everyone will be happy.
Okay. Ankit has a question. How do you track latest developments in social media?
Can I take this one? Like in 30 seconds short, I'll just explain it. So I think every one of us can, each one of us can do the same, right?
All of you can take one question. I won't be there for next 30-40 seconds.
What I've seen is whenever Umang answers or Harsh answers, there's nothing for me to add.
But
no, it's not like that. It's not like that.
I think the reverse is true. For a lot of times.
yeah, that's true.
So okay. I think one panelist for each question.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think that would be
okay. Let's go ahead.
Okay, so I'll answer.
I will mute myself.
Yes,
I won't be speaking.
No, it's okay. Okay, so I'll answer the question from Ankit Yadav. He says, "How do you track latest developments in the social media marketing agency?" Well, Google is the key. When you go to Google, just click on the news, and then there are certain bifurcations down there. Click on the latest news, and in the box below, within close bracket, just write social media marketing. And if you put social media marketing all together, what happens is that the words, they come together instead of social media and marketing articles all together. So I think this is a very good way to find what is going on in the industry. Second question, he says, are there any blogs, tutorials, etc., that you would suggest for a new professional? See, I'm not telling you what you need to do. You should know what you have to do. So read, uh, uh, enroll yourself in courses, free online courses, do everything, but do keep a time limit, so that you know that within 3 months I have to study everything, and then I decide in which area do I need to proceed. Because I won't be the best person to tell you कि आपका interest कहाँ पे lie करता है. I think you're the best person to know where you want to go ahead. So I think this is a best way. Online videos, YouTube videos, Coursera, Udemy, they work very well. And I think I have finished the question in 30
Great.
seconds.
Devanshika has a question. Who is going to take it? Harsh or Vineet?
I actually have no knowledge at all on the catering business, so I think it'll be it wouldn't make sense for me to probably step in on this.
Okay. So there's a question below that. Kaushal for Harsh.
I have one little thing which I've noticed about Devanshika's thing. I don't know the whole part about it, but Devanshika, what has happened that I'm from Mumbai. So in Mumbai, when the lockdown happened, everything was shut. There was no home delivery. There was nothing. Whereas in Delhi, these restaurants were on. They were open for takeaway deliveries, right? So the question that you've asked is, with people getting more and more comfortable with work from home, how do you see business of catering and everything changing? So if you have a setup which is, I don't know, it again depends on the rules and regulation, but you have something set up like in a place like Gujarat where takeaways are acceptable, I think maybe you can start, and post lockdown it will go up. But if you're in Mumbai, I wouldn't suggest that to be a good option, because the expenses are pouring up. You're paying for the rent, you already have a certain stock which is going foul. So depending upon the state that you're in, please make a calculated choice.
Okay. Great.
I have something to add here, which has been my observation, and I completely hear you with this on this one. So, what I see, and this could also be a worrying trend, is marketplaces will eventually become the new standards. For example, when it comes to food, FSSAI is the de facto body which kind of certifies a place. But in a situation, and this is irrespective of which industry, whether it's food or any other industry, is marketplaces which have key leverage with customers like Zomato or Swiggy will become the new norms. For example, if there is a restaurant down the road which is not on Zomato or Swiggy, but if there is one more which is either on Zomato or Swiggy and they certify that this restaurant follows hygiene practices, would you order from the one certified by Zomato or Swiggy, or would you go to the other place? So this is a worry, because what is going to happen is bodies which have been formed by the government for the process of ensuring hygiene of a place or any other industry, they will get lesser importance compared to marketplaces which will set the rules. So how this is tackled and how it affects consumer buying behavior, your guess is as good as mine. But it might lead to very biased choices by consumers just for this reason.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah, very true. So it's for Harsh. Kaushal is asking. Are you able to hear see the
Yeah.
question, Harsh? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just read it out quickly. How is it for you guys to deal with international brands, since the brands themselves had their own apparel? How were you able to convince them? If you can get some sort of insights or a story. Okay, very, very interesting question. I think the question that you've asked is pretty much why we started the Soul Store in the first place. I think when the company was started in about June 2013, the whole concept of official merchandise in India was still largely non-existent. I think if you had to probably buy like an original T-shirt of say like a superhero or WWE or any of these other properties, I mean, you either basically bought a fake off the roads for around 200, 300 rupees. There's never been a shortage of fakes in our country. Or if you have some relative staying in the US or somewhere else, when they come for their vacation, they basically gift it to you. Those T-shirts obviously cost anywhere between 2,000-3,000 rupees, which is unaffordable for almost the entire population. I think the whole concept behind the Soul Store was to kind of fill this gap where there was obviously enough demand for official merchandise, but availability and price and quality were definitely issues. I think for all of these international brands, in fact, I think India is a massive, massive market. I don't see India being a problem. I actually see India being a solution to a lot of these brands. The first license that we got was back, I think, in 2014, which was actually the Friends license. We luckily got it for a fairly reasonable price because at that time Friends had kind of died down. They hadn't started showing Friends again on television, and luckily the time we got the license coincided with when they started showing the show again on television, when the interest kind of picked up. So you had a lot of older people who had watched Friends kind of rewatching the program. You had a lot of new people as well coming on board for the first time and watching the program. And I think because that license did really, really well for us, we always considered our lucky license. And that kind of opened the way for us to get more and more licenses on board. I think a lot of international brands like your Disneys and your Turners do realize that there is a massive, massive audience in India, a massive young audience in India, which is willing to spend on good quality merchandise. And I actually think India is one of the most important markets. So to answer your question, I don't see international brands thinking of India as a problem. I think India is actually the solution to a lot of their problems. And if partners like us can actually help them solve the problem of fake merchandise, which is a massive, massive problem in India and China, I think it's a great sort of step for the brands or for these international brands to tie up with local partners and kind of help erase this whole pirated merchandise problem that is there.
Very true. So let us take one more question. It is already 12:35 now. Which one will you like to take? There's for social media. Influencer marketing question is there. So is anybody interested in the question?
I can answer it. Where is it?
Is
For all
Srishti.
experts. And
Srishti Agrawal.
Anu Meha has
Anu
also
Meha is also.
asked two people. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is Srishti says, for all experts' opinion on influencer marketing in the age of low engagement rate, fake profiles,
And increased
and
cost.
increased cost, as in no.
So maybe there are a lot
Yeah.
of food influencers, travel bloggers, and those kind of people
Mhm.
who have got their 10,000, 20,000 followers by paying 100, 500, 600 rupees. And then there are low engagements. But then when you ask them to post something, then they ask for a lot of bucks. So,
Okay, so-
how do you deal with that?
Okay, Shrishti and Anu, I'm combining your question. I'm not specifically answering one particular thing because there is a lot of confusion in the question that you've asked. So, my opinion on influencer marketing is that it does wonders to your brand. Now, if you have a lot of money, you can go for, all good ones, top 10 ones. If you don't, I think micro influencers, they work very good. So when I talk of micro influencers, the positive is that the amount of fake followers aren't that many, and whatever they are saying, they can actually go down deep in a certain area in a particular city, and they can spread your message, unlike the big influencers who are there everywhere. So yes, this is one thing. And other thing, what did you ask? There's so many questions.
Yeah. So that was, is influencer marketing underutilized in India?
No, I feel it is not underutilized at all. You can take example of Nykaa. Nykaa is one such brand that they have immense hold on influencer marketing. So I feel influencer marketing is in, and it is here to stay. Now, when it comes to fake followers, I'm assuming everyone has fake followers. But the only thing that you can do is try to gauge what is your TG, in which city or in which country are you planning to. If you want a detailed broad scope where the influencer is there everywhere, maybe you can go for the good ones. Or if you have limited budget and if you want to cater to, say, a particular area in Bangalore or more in Calcutta, something like that, you can tap into the influencers who are very popular in that particular city.
Okay, great. I hope that answers the question. I would like to conclude the session. Any closing remarks that you would like to add? Vineet, sir, you have been quiet for a long time.
Yeah.
I feel that 2020 is going to be a very challenging time for all marketers, because there are certain things everybody has to kind of work on. I think one key aspect that will really take big importance, and it might end up becoming a division in itself in a lot of organizations, is customer experience. And while we talk of marketing, we talk of customer service, we talk of sales and everything else, customer experience is the field that brings all of this together, because it really understands the consumer journey. whether it is offline or online, or whether it's a hybrid or blend. But this particular aspect is going to really take a lot of gain a lot of importance in a lot of organizations, whether they're startups or established companies. So, because the only thing that will differentiate brands is going to be the customer experience they're able to give. Is the salesperson talking the same language as the marketing person? Is the customer support team saying the same thing that your sales team has promised? So all this is going to become very crucial, and that is what is going to really make a brand or an organization kind of stand out. So that's one thing that I would want to really keep a watch on, uh, as a overall field that is now going to get a lot of importance in the coming months and years.
Okay. Harsh?
Yeah, I think to sum up kind of what we've all spoken about, how has social media consumption obviously changed? What can we expect the future to look like? I think one very important sort of thing that all brands need to realize is, even after the lockdown, for example, gets over, even after people slowly start going back to their normal lives, I think the definition of normal has definitely changed. Even after restaurants start opening up, theaters start opening up, gyms start opening up, I think one thing which is going to happen is, because this entire situation took everyone by surprise, I think there definitely will be some sort of mid to long term effects that people that are there on people. I think in general, people's, whether you call it paranoia or you call it how alert they are, is definitely going to increase. So, like Vineet mentioned, right, even if I go to a restaurant, say 1 month down the line, I'm going to be a lot more particular about the hygiene standards. I'm going to be a lot more particular about where I go, who I interact with. And I think one way for brands to kind of take note of this is, it'll be very important for brands in their communication on their website, on their social media, to kind of regain the trust of customers. I think this is definitely it's obviously a bit of a shaky situation for everyone. There's a lot of concern, there's a lot of different information. People are still not really sure of what is happening. And I think for brands to kind of reconnect with their customers, is going to be very important to kind of rebuild that trust in their communication. Whether it's about the safety measures that you are taking, what are the steps that you are taking as a brand, how are you doing things differently from your competitors? I think a lot more focus will have to go on that sort of communication. I don't think we can simply go back to communicating the way we used to 3 or 4 months ago, and expect things to go back to normal. So I think the trust factor is definitely something that's probably at a bit of a low right now, and it is going to take brands time to get that back on track. But that has to be the focus of brands in the short and mid term as far as communication is concerned.
Great. Umang?
Um, I feel the customer mindset has changed drastically. People are now realizing the importance of essential products, and all the other pleasures that we indulge in is kind of at the backseat. So the challenge that I see in the coming few months is how a brand or a freelancer or a to-be marketer is planning to upgrade their engagement with the customers. So when I talk of a brand, when I talk of myself, a big challenge for me would be content creation. I cannot post the same kind of content right now. I cannot use the same strategies. I think that has to be a emotional feature, something that needs to connect with all the content, and it needs to go across. Second thing that is of a concern is the engagement. So even though I would say, if I used to get 10 engagements now post lockdown, if I'm getting say 8, I am not sure that those 8 engagements would give me the same result as it used to give earlier. So I would ask everyone to, just read more about what everyone is facing the industry right now, and update your skills when it comes to a new type of content creation.
Okay.
And again, we can go about it a lot, but yes, a big shift in content consumption or social media pattern has happened. So please be aware.